The Sapphire Gladiator laughed at the human's frailty, until she was the one bleeding. In the gloom beneath the arena's dome, the alien warrior Kayla waited. Blue skin shimmered with a polished sapphire sheen beneath the harsh spotlights that circled overhead, fracturing into shifting halos on the battered sand. Her curved, swept-back horns caught the glare, casting twin shadows that danced above her pointed ears, which twitched involuntarily at the cacophony. The cheering gamblers, the jeering fans, the metallic thunder of feet stomping from every direction. The title of champion weighed on her, both armor and shackle. She rolled her shoulders, feeling the flex and coil of her lithe frame, each muscle honed from years of combat. Silver eyes, cold as mercury, narrowed at the far end of the sand where the final gate rumbled open. Blinding white flooded the floor, banishing shadows in a harsh tide. Her challenger stepped forward. Human. A Terran, as the crowd called them. He was lean, almost gaunt, with pale skin stretched taut over wiry muscle. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and his bare arms bore no scars, no shining cybernetics, only the faded yellow and green of old bruises. He looked fragile, a mistake, out of place among gladiators bred for slaughter. The crowd howled with anticipation as Kayla stepped forward, twin-bladed staff gripped in both hands. The weapon pulsed with blue energy, casting flickers of light across her face. She called out, voice ringing in the vast chamber, "Do you have a name, Terran?" The human only studied her. His eyes, a stormy blue-gray, moved coolly over her stance, her weapon, the subtle tells of her breathing. He said nothing. The silence unsettled her more than she cared to admit. A siren blared, shrill, urgent, the signal to begin. Kayla surged forward, a streak of blue and silver, sand scattering beneath her swift stride. The staff whirled, blades humming, and she slashed in a deadly arc toward the human's chest. But Jonas, she learned his name later, slipped aside, weight shifting with uncanny grace. The blade sang harmlessly past, and he rolled low, coming up behind her. Kayla spun, driving the staff at his legs, but he danced back, using the pillar's shadow to slip from her reach. Again and again she pressed the attack, relentless, a predator circling wounded prey. The crowd's roar became a confused murmur as Jonas evaded, redirecting her force, ducking beneath her swings. He moved with a fluidity that mocked her aggression, never striking back, always slipping away. He used the arena's pillars and broken statuary to force her to reset, keeping distance, keeping time on his own terms. Kayla gritted her teeth, frustration simmering. She lunged, feinted high, swept the staff low to catch his ankles, but Jonas vaulted over her weapon, flipping lightly and landing on the far side. She snarled, spinning, trying to anticipate him, but he was never where she expected. Her lungs burned. Sweat prickled beneath the armor plating on her forearms. Each attack grew a little wilder, a little less measured. The crowd sensed it, the din dulled to confused murmurs. She, the champion, was being played, used. Suddenly, a chill stung her cheek. The sensation was so alien, so unexpected. She froze. She touched her face. Fingers came away slick with blue blood. Silence crashed down over the crowd. Jonas stood, calm, a slim blade, almost invisible in his pale hand, stained with a streak of her blood. He met her gaze, eyes steady, expression unreadable. He had drawn her blood. The invincible champion was wounded. Handlers rushed the sand, pushing through the hush with harsh commands. Kayla's pulse hammered with humiliation as they hurried her away, guiding her beneath the stands. The cut on her cheek burned worse than any wound before, shame radiating through every muscle. The medbay reeked of antiseptic and burned flesh. Jonas sat on a cot, shoulders squared, while a multi-eyed medic sealed a shallow cut on his arm with a hiss of blue gel. The creature muttered in its native tongue, something about the master's anticipation for a rematch. Jonas said nothing. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, mind elsewhere. He replayed the fight in his memory, dissecting every move. Kayla's tells, her breathing, her rhythm, searching for weaknesses, cataloging strengths. The door crashed open, and a scaled guard strode in, armor clinking. "Terran," he barked, "to new quarters. Master wants rivalry for the crowds. You train with champion daily." Jonas rose, following the guard through winding corridors. The new cell was spare but clean, a palace compared to his previous hovel, with a bunk, a basin, and a view of the training grounds. He set his meager belongings on the bed. The door across the corridor slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Kayla emerged, wound closed, silver eyes burning. Her gaze locked on Jonas, resentment and something sharper flickering in her stare. He stood his ground, expression cool. The corridor thrummed with tension as they faced each other, two predators circling an invisible line. The guards' laughter echoed down the halls, the doors sealing behind them with a final, decisive clang. Their first training session was in the cage, a wide circle of shimmering containment fields and steel mesh, the floor worn smooth by years of grappling bodies. No weapons, no armor, only bodies, will, and the eyes of the master behind smoked glass above, expecting spectacle but finding something quieter, more elemental. Kayla stood at one side, her blue skin gleaming with a faint sheen of sweat, muscles coiled, horns swept back in defiance. Jonas waited opposite, bare-chested, his pale frame lithe but corded with lean muscle. His eyes never left hers, steady and unreadable. A chime sounded. They moved. Kayla struck first, a storm of kicks and open-handed blows. Each movement was a flash of Sapphire, her knee arcing high, her heels slicing the air, fists aiming for the vulnerable hinge of Jonas's jaw. But Jonas did not meet force with force. He shifted, ducked, parried, catching her wrist and guiding it past, letting her own momentum betray her. "Wasted effort," he murmured, voice even. "You telegraph your right. Always." She snarled, twisting free, her elbow sweeping low, but he was already gone, pivoting behind her. She felt his fingers at her hip, the barest brush, then the grip vanished as she spun to face him again. They circled. Their bodies clashed and broke apart, hip against thigh, arms sliding over rib, the sound of breath and skin and quick, shuffling footwork. Kayla pressed her advantage in speed, but Jonas countered with economy. He absorbed her power, redirected it, made her moves feel cumbersome. "You're using too much strength," he said, sidestepping a kick and letting her stumble past. "You don't need to overpower me. Just outthink me." She bared her teeth. "I am thinking about breaking your jaw." He smiled, just a flicker. "Try." Her anger simmered, a familiar burn in her chest. She feinted left, then drove forward, both hands aiming for his throat, but he caught her wrists, spinning her into the mat. She landed with a grunt, the cage reverberating around them. She twisted, using her legs to scissor his waist, but he pried her free, rolling atop her in one smooth movement. His grip was firm, his weight pinning her. "You keep attacking in straight lines," he said, breath hot against her ear. "Predictable." She bucked, snarling, and managed to twist free, slamming him onto his back. She straddled him, knees braced on either side of his ribs, her face inches from his, silver eyes blazing. "Enough," she growled, her voice low, trembling with effort and something else, something that made her skin burn where it brushed his. The bell rang, sharp and final. The session was over, but neither moved. For a moment, they remained locked together, her breath ragged, his chest rising and falling beneath her hands. The air was thick, charged with unspoken challenge and a new simmering tension neither could name. Days passed in a blur of sweat, bruises, and relentless drills. The cage became their world, the site of daily combat, grudges, and, slowly, something less adversarial. Kayla's anger lingered. She greeted each session with a storm of attacks, determined to prove herself, but Jonas was a wall she could not breach. Yet beneath her resentment, curiosity grew. She began to watch him between strikes, to note the small adjustments of his stance, the way his eyes measured each angle and feint. She changed her approach, shifting her weight, attacking from unexpected angles. For the first time, Jonas had to adjust, his counters slowing, his brow furrowing in concentration. One morning, after a particularly grueling exchange, Jonas broke the silence. "You're improving," he said, massaging a bruise on his shoulder. Kayla bristled. "Do not patronize me." "I'm not." He glanced at her, then gestured for her to come closer. "Let me show you something." She hesitated, pride warring with intrigue, but finally stepped within his reach. Jonas moved behind her, hands gentle but precise as he guided her arms into position. "When you're grappling, you're too eager to use force. Leverage is better," he explained. He demonstrated a joint lock, slow and careful, letting her feel the subtle shift as he twisted her wrist. She tensed, instinct flaring, but he released her at the first sign of discomfort. "See? Control, not power." Kayla flexed her fingers, replaying the movement in her mind. "Again," she said. He obliged, slower this time, and she followed the mechanics, her frown deepening as she realized how easily he could have broken her grip in the cage. "Why do you help me?" she asked suddenly. Jonas shrugged. "Because learning goes both ways. You adapt fast. That's rare." Kayla snorted, but a spark of respect glimmered in her eyes. "You have much to learn yourself." "Teach me then," Jonas said, meeting her gaze without flinching. So she did. In the next session, Kayla stopped mid-fight, seizing his wrist and twisting sharply. "Varen wrist lock," she announced, demonstrating the pressure point with careful precision. Jonas winced, gritting his teeth, but nodded. "Not bad," he conceded. "How do you break it?" She shifted her grip, showing him the counter. Their hands touched, her sapphire skin against his pale fingers, each movement growing less adversarial, more instructive. Their rhythm changed. What began as domination became teaching, and then learning, each filling the roles of mentor and pupil, sometimes in the same breath. After a particularly intense session, Jonas sat on the floor, breathing hard. "You're holding back," he said. Kayla wiped sweat from her brow. "I'm considering your advice, and adapting." He looked up at her, a grudging smile on his lips. "Good." She offered a hand, and he took it, letting her pull him to his feet. The tension between them had changed. It was still there, an undercurrent of rivalry, of pride, but now it was threaded with something finer: curiosity, respect, even perhaps the first flicker of trust. Another morning, Kayla pinned Jonas in a textbook hold, her face inches from his. "Yield?" she asked. He shook his head, breathless. "Not yet." She laughed, the sound low and surprisingly warm. "Stubborn Terran." "Relentless Varen," he replied, and she loosened her grip just enough for him to wriggle free, rolling away. As the days bled together, the rest of the world faded. The cage became a crucible, heat, sweat, and the scrape of flesh on metal. They bruised and battered each other, but always, always they learned. Jonas showed Kayla how to use leverage to upend a larger opponent, how to read the subtle signals before a strike. Kayla taught Jonas to exploit joint locks, to move his center of gravity in the Varen way, to spot feints in her native fighting style. They sparred, they argued, they laughed, sometimes in spite of themselves. After one session, as they sat catching their breath, Kayla said quietly, "I never expected to respect a Terran." Jonas looked at her, sweat darkening his hair. "And I never expected to learn from a champion." She grinned, sharp and bright. We are full of surprises, it seems. Their training became less about domination, more about learning, mentor and pupil, roles blurring, a new current of tension beneath the surface. Jonas pushed Kayla harder than ever before. The cage rang with the sharp sound of impact, palms meeting flesh, bodies hitting the mat, breaths heaving in the echoing silence after each drill. Sweat slicked their skin, pooled beneath their feet, shimmered in rivulets along Kayla's sapphire arms. She moved by instinct now, muscles trembling with exhaustion, her vision narrowing to the next strike, the next dodge, the next demand from Jonas. Again, he said, voice low but unyielding. He was relentless, breaking down her stance, correcting the angle of her elbows, forcing her to repeat every motion until her body screamed in protest. She launched a punch, telegraphed and slow. Jonas caught her wrist mid-air, twisting just enough for her to feel the strain. "You're holding back," he said, eyes searching her face. "That isn't how you survive here. Again." She gritted her teeth, every breath scraping her throat. Hours had passed, she didn't know how many, only that her limbs felt carved from lead. Still, she obeyed, driving forward, but her strength faltered. He spun, swept her legs from beneath her. She hit the mat hard, stars bursting behind her eyes. When she tried to rise, her arms gave out. She slumped, gasping, pride burning hotter than her muscles. Jonas crouched beside her, frown etched between his brows. "Up, you're not done." "I can't." Her voice broke, raw and shamed. "You can," he insisted, quieter now but unwavering. "Get up, Kayla. Why do you fight as if you've already lost?" His words struck deeper than any blow. She stared at him, chest heaving, the question echoing in the hollow of her heart. He didn't let up. "What are you afraid of? Who are you fighting for?" She closed her eyes, her body shaking, the walls she'd built crumbling with every breath. "You don't understand," she whispered. Jonas sat back, folding his arms. "Then help me understand, because right now, you're fighting like defeat is inevitable, like you expect it." Something inside her broke. Kayla pressed her forehead to the mat, breath hitching. "It's not for glory, not for the crowd. My kin, my family, are slaves to the master. Forced laborers in the hydro mines. He took them years ago as payment for a debt I never made. My victories here keep them alive. One loss, and he—" Her voice failed. She dug her fingers into the mat, nails biting her palms. "If I fall, they pay the price." Jonas was silent. The truth hung between them, fragile and raw. She forced herself to look at him, silver eyes shining with pain. "When you cut me, when you broke my streak, I thought I could carry it. But the master, he threatened them afterward, reminded me what's at stake." Her pride withered, leaving only fear and exhaustion. "I have no choice." Jonas's face softened, understanding flickering in his eyes. He reached out, hesitated, then gently tucked a stray lock of hair behind her horn. The gesture was gentle, unhurried, their first touch not born of violence or instruction. His fingers lingered for a heartbeat, apology and understanding in the single quiet motion. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't know." She blinked, uncertain, her breath trembling. "It's not your fault. Survival is the rule here." He shook his head. "It matters. I thought only of my own survival. I should have seen more." He lowered his hand, his gaze never leaving hers. "I was trained to find hope where there is none. Before this, before the arena, I was a tactician. My job was to see patterns, to find the cracks and use them. That's how I survived." Kayla studied him, the rigid lines of his jaw, the haunted blue of his eyes. "And what do you see now?" He took a long breath, searching her face. "I see someone who fights for more than herself. I see someone who's been trapped by someone else's rules. He paused, voice steady. We can change the rules. She stared at him, disbelief and longing warring within her. How? The master owns everything. Everyone. Every system has a flaw, Jonas replied. Every prison has a key. If we work together. He extended his hand to her, palm open, the gesture simple but profound. We stop fighting each other. We fight for a way out. Kayla's pride had been her shield, her weapon. Now it lay shattered on the mat, leaving her exposed. She hesitated, fear warring with hope, then placed her hand in his. Her skin was warm, her grip trembling, but real. An alliance, then? She said, voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, fingers closing around hers, solid and reassuring. Not as enemies, as allies. A weight lifted, imperceptible but real. For the first time since her capture, Kayla allowed herself to hope. They sat there, hands clasped, the cage suddenly less like a prison and more like the beginning of something new. Their training became covert plotting, a new layer woven seamlessly into the routine of sweat and bruises. Each feint was a conversation, each clinch a hidden question. To the guards pacing beyond the cage, it looked like nothing more than rivalry rekindled. Two bodies testing limits, champion and challenger locked in the same relentless cycle. But beneath the surface, every move was freighted with meaning. Jonas circled left, throwing a lazy jab. Kayla deflected, her voice low. New patrol at the west gate. 2 shifts overlap, but only for 5 minutes. He nodded, keeping the rhythm, footwork precise. Camera blind spot in the supply corridor, if you're fast. She pressed in close, bodies tangled, her hand on his shoulder as if correcting his stance. North corridor sensors trigger at full weight, not at half. Crawl, not run. He grunted, catching her wrist, spinning her toward the mat. Dust rose. While pinning her, he traced an escape route with his fingertip, 3 lines, an X at the end, before it vanished under the sweep of her hand. To the untrained eye, it was nothing but a correction, a coach's guidance. To them, it was a blueprint. Kayla rolled free, breathless. Emergency power feeds through the lower maintenance duct. Sabotage there. Lights out for at least 20 seconds. Jonas let her go, rising with a nod. We'll need a distraction. Something big, something they can't ignore. She offered a small, sharp smile. Leave that to me. Their sparring sessions became this, an elaborate dance, every touch a signal of trust, every whispered plan, a promise. Sometimes Jonas faked frustration, voice raised so the guards would hear. Sometimes Kayla threw him harder than necessary, making a show of dominance for the watching cameras. But always in the brief, breathless space where their bodies pressed close, the real work took place. Guard commander's access code, she murmured during a clinch, hot breath against his ear. 6 syllables, starts with Vera. He grinned, low and private. You're full of surprises. She shoved him away, but her eyes sparkled with shared risk. Don't forget it. At night, the corridor between their cells became a fragile lifeline. The guards' heavy steps faded, doors sealed, and the hush of enforced solitude descended. Yet their voices threaded the darkness, soft and careful, never rising above a whisper. Are you awake? Jonas's voice, hushed, carried through the ventilation grate between their doors. Kayla replied, her tone quieter still. Always. Sleep is for those with peace. He understood too well. There were nights when old nightmares clawed at the edges of his mind, battles lost, comrades left behind, the helpless ache of captivity. On such nights, the cool, smooth stone from his childhood home was his anchor. He rolled it in his palm, grounding himself in memory. One evening, as the plan neared completion, he sat on his cot, stone in hand. This was from the river near my village. I used to throw it across the current, see if I could reach the far bank. There was a pause, then a soft sound, the click of Kayla's door. She appeared, silhouetted in the half-light, something small clutched in her fist. She crossed the corridor, silent as a shadow, and knelt by the bars. For luck, she said, and offered a tiny carved animal shaped of pale wood. My clan used to give these to children before trials. It's a guardian. My mother made it. Jonas accepted the gift, their fingers brushing. The contact lingered, warm and tentative. His eyes met hers, and in that moment, no words were needed. Understanding passed silently between them, a recognition of loss, of hope, of kinship forged in adversity. He pressed the stone into her palm. For the far bank, then. For a future. She closed her fingers around it, her voice a tremor. For freedom. They parted, returning to their cells, each carrying the other's talisman. The corridor felt less like a prison, more like a bridge. As the eve of the rematch dawned, tension wound tight through every corner of the champion's wing. Even the handlers moved with anxious energy, snapping at servants and glancing over their shoulders. The air was thick with anticipation, the knowledge that something momentous hovered just out of sight. Jonas spent the day rehearsing their plan in his mind, mapping each step, each risk. Failure meant death, not just for them, but for everyone Kayla loved. He replayed every coded conversation, every careful signal, searching for flaws. That evening, as the arena's lights flickered to life and the crowd's distant roar seeped through the walls, Jonas stood outside Kayla's door. He paused, heart pounding, then keyed in the code she'd whispered in secret. The door slid open with a sigh. Kayla sat inside, staff laid across her knees, sharpening the edge with slow, methodical strokes. Her shoulders were taut, every line of her body drawn with tension. She glanced up, silver eyes wary, then softened when she saw him. He entered, closing the door behind him. For a moment, neither spoke. The world outside faded to a muffled blur. Jonas moved to her side, lowering himself onto the bench beside her. Their bodies sat close, knees almost touching, the air between them charged with everything unspoken. He reached out, covering her hands with his own. Her fingers were cool, calloused, trembling just faintly. "You're ready?" he asked, voice soft. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Instead, she set aside the staff and turned to face him fully. He studied her sharp features, the sweep of her horns, the vulnerable hope in her eyes. He squeezed her hands, grounding her. Kayla drew a deep, shaky breath, then leaned forward, resting her forehead to his. Her eyes drifted closed. Jonas closed his as well, breathing her in. The wild, bright scent of her skin, the pulse of her hope and fear. No words passed between them. They didn't need any. For a long, quiet moment they stayed like that. Two warriors, two survivors, bound by trust and necessity, holding to each other against the coming storm. The rivalry that had once defined them was gone, replaced by unity, sealed in this silent, intimate promise. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The rematch exploded in a storm of noise and light. Floodlights stabbed down from the heights of the dome, slicing through the haze. The crowd's roar crashed over the sand, a tidal wave of anticipation and bloodlust. Up in his box, the arena master lounged on a velvet throne, fingers steepled, eyes bright with greedy anticipation. Everything about the night promised spectacle. On the sand, Kayla and Jonas faced each other. The distance between them was charged, every muscle tensed, every nerve strung tight. They circled, slow at first, feet whispering across blood-stained grit. Their eyes locked, two predators measuring the moment, every movement sharper, more attuned than before. It was a dance, fierce, precise, each strike and parry layered with hidden meaning. Kayla lunged, blue skin gleaming as her staff swept low. Jonas ducked, the edge slicing the air above his head. He countered, blade flashing, but Kayla spun aside, the crowd howling as metal rang against wood. Their attacks were real, landing with force, but underneath, every blow and block was a signal, a code only they could read. Left guard weak, Jonas muttered, voice masked by the roar. His blade flicked toward the east gate. Kayla responded with a flurry of blows, each one a countdown. 3, 2, 1. The arena master leaned forward, greedy eyes glittering. The crowd's energy peaked, baying for blood. Kayla fainted, driving Jonas back. With a sharp cry, she knocked his weapon away. The blade skittered across the sand. The crowd erupted as she pressed the staff to his throat, pinning him, champion triumphant above her fallen foe. The master rose, savoring the spectacle. But instead of finishing Jonas, Kayla pivoted. With a snap of her wrists, she reversed her grip on the staff. No kill, just a sudden shift. At that same instant, Jonas moved. His hand slid to his boot, drawing a slim, hidden blade. The choreography broke. They turned as one, dropping the mask of rivalry. Kayla's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos. Now! The world tilted. Jonas hurled his blade, catching a guard at the edge of the sand in the thigh. Kayla spun, her staff a blue blur, cracking the jaw of another. The crowd's delight twisted to confusion, then panic, as the two fighters launched themselves at the perimeter guards. Alarms blared, high, shrill, urgent. Spotlights whipped across the sand, catching fugitives instead of champions. The crowd became a stampede, fleeing up the steps as security forces poured into the arena. Jonas and Kayla fought as one, moving with a unity forged in sweat and secrecy. Kayla's staff swept legs from under armored guards, while Jonas darted between them, striking at joints and throats with surgical precision. They moved toward the main gate, leaving a trail of fallen sentries in their wake. A pair of enforcers blocked their path. Kayla barreled forward, her staff spinning, while Jonas dropped to a knee, sweeping one guard's legs as Kayla vaulted over his shoulders, driving the second back with a shout. "For the kin!" Kayla's voice echoed, rallying those watching from the shadows, igniting hope where there had only been fear. The great gate groaned, control panel hacked with a stolen code. The final barrier slid open with a grinding protest. Together, Kayla and Jonas vanished into the labyrinth of the station, the shouts of pursuers fading behind them. The corridors beyond the arena were a maze of flickering lights and grimy walls. Jonas led the way, Kayla close behind, clutching a stolen pass. The plan was alive now, no longer whispered in code, but lived in desperate motion. They reached the labor pens, a cluster of reinforced doors, each one guarded by tired, bored sentries. Kayla pressed the pass to the lock, voice shaking with urgency. "Hold them off. I'll get them out." Jonas nodded, turning to block the corridor as alarms shrieked through the halls. Kayla slipped inside, breath catching at the sight of her kin. Dozens of Veyran men and women, marked by bruises and chains but fierce and unbroken. Children clung to mothers, elders leaned on battered canes. Hope sparked in their eyes as she strode forward. "Kayla!" A young woman rushed to her, voice trembling. "Is it real?" Kayla gripped her shoulders. "It's real. We're leaving now. Take anything you can use as a weapon." The prisoners surged forward, snapping shackles, grabbing pipes and wrenches, tools turned to makeshift arms. Kayla herded them out, Jonas at the front, his blade now red with warning. The revolt spread like fire. Other pens opened, captives flooding the halls, joining the uprising with shouts and battered fists. Guards tried to stem the tide, but they were outnumbered, overwhelmed by sheer desperation. The fight became a running battle. Kayla led her people through shadowed passageways, every twist and turn mapped in memory. Jonas covered the rear, eyes always searching for danger. Shouts rang out, boots pounded the decks, muzzle flashes lit the gloom. They rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a cluster of prisoners, miners and scavengers, faces smeared with oil and hope. Kayla raised her staff. "With us!" she called, and they fell in, swelling the ranks. Jonas darted ahead, disabling a sentry panel, plunging the corridor into darkness. "Hurry!" he shouted, guiding the Varens with his voice. A checkpoint loomed ahead. Barricades, a line of armed guards. Kayla's kin hesitated, eyes wide. She stepped forward, staff in hand, voice fierce. "No more chains, for the kin!" The words galvanized them. As one, the crowd surged, overwhelming the barricade in a rush of bodies and fury. Kayla fought at the front, her staff smashing armor, Jonas beside her, blade flashing. Finally, they reached the hangar, wide, echoing, filled with the roar of klaxons and the distant thrum of engines. At the far end sat a battered freighter, its hull scorched and pitted, cargo ramp yawning open, freedom within reach. Kayla looked at Jonas, eyes shining. "We're almost there." He gripped her shoulder, steady and certain. "Let's finish this." Together, with their people at their backs, they charged across the hangar toward the waiting ship, hope surging with every step. Above the chaos of the hangar, the arena master appeared on a high balcony, swathed in robes of deep crimson, his face twisted with outrage. Guards flanked him, armor glinting, weapons ready. He slammed his fist against the rail, voice amplified by the speakers that echoed throughout the station. "Return to your pens or be destroyed," he shouted, words rolling like thunder over the sea of fugitives. "You are nothing. You are mine." With a sharp gesture, he signaled his guards. Plasma bolts erupted from the balcony, streaks of blue-white fire slashing through the smoky air. The blast scorched the floor, splintered crates, and sent the freed captives diving for cover. Kayla and Jonas moved as one, the battered freighter looming just ahead, ramp yawning open like a promise. Kayla spun her staff, deflecting a bolt that would have struck a fleeing child. Jonas fired a scavenged pistol, suppressing the guards long enough for more of Kayla's kin to dash up the ramp. "Keep moving," Jonas shouted, his voice rough with smoke and effort. "Get aboard, now!" Kayla pressed forward, muscles burning, senses tuned to every shout and scream. She shielded an elderly Varen woman from a hail of fire, then swept a guard's legs, sending him tumbling into the path of another. Jonas was at her side, reloading, breath ragged. "Go!" Kayla called to the last cluster of fugitives, urging them up the ramp. "I'll cover you." He caught her wrist, eyes fierce. "We do this together." She nodded once, then turned her gaze to the balcony above. The arena master's voice rose, desperate now. "You'll never escape. You belong to me." Kayla's anger crystallized into purpose. She met Jonas's eyes. "I have to end this," she said, voice low. "For all of us." Without waiting for permission, she sprinted across the open hangar, weaving between pillars and smoking debris, dodging plasma bolts by inches. Jonas covered her, firing at the guards, buying her precious seconds. Kayla leapt up a stack of crates, her staff spinning to deflect a near miss. She vaulted to a catwalk, then climbed, every muscle screaming, until she reached the balcony's edge. The master's guards converged, but Kayla was fury incarnate. She swept one aside with a crack of her staff, spun to duck a blade, then drove her knee into another's chest, sending him sprawling. The master backed away, fear overtaking arrogance. He drew a sidearm, hands trembling. Kayla stalked forward, her voice cold. "You have tormented my kin for the last time." He fired, the bolts searing past her ear. She twisted, staff lashing out, knocking the weapon from his grip. It clattered across the tiles, lost. He tried to run, but she seized him, twisting his arm behind his back. "Please," he gasped, all authority gone. "I can pay." Kayla wrenched the control key from his belt, shoving him to the ground. "Your reign ends now." She spun away, hurling the key down to Jonas below. Catch! He snatched it out of the air, unlocking the last docking clamps on the freighter. Kayla sprinted back across the balcony, vaulting the rail. She landed hard on the lower catwalk, pain shooting up her leg, but she forced herself on, leaping, sliding, running, her only thought to reach the ship before it was too late. Jonas stood at the ramp, pistol in one hand, eyes never leaving her. Kayla, now! He shouted, reaching out. The ramp began to rise, engines whining. Kayla pushed through the last desperate guards, staff flashing in furious arcs. She cleared the final meters in a sprint, hurling herself up the ramp just as it began to close. Jonas grabbed her arm, hauling her inside. The hatch slammed shut behind them. Above, the balcony exploded in sparks as the freighter's guns tore through the master's final line of defense. Flames licked at the arena's superstructure, alarms wailing, chaos swallowing the station whole. Inside, the world was heat and vibration. The engines roared, rattling the deck plates as the freighter blasted away from the burning arena. Through the viewport, Kayla watched the station shrink, flames blooming in its heart, a tyrant's kingdom undone. The ship's interior was a confusion of voices, her kin, freed and weeping, embracing in disbelief. Jonas staggered to the cockpit, slumping into the pilot's seat, blood streaking his arm from a fresh wound. Kayla found him there, breath coming in shudders, adrenaline finally ebbing. She dropped to her knees beside him, pulling a medkit from the console. "Let me see," she murmured, hands already working. She cleaned his wound, fingers gentle, touch lingering. He winced, but managed a weak grin. "You're a better fighter than a nurse," he teased, voice hoarse. She smiled, relief breaking through exhaustion. "Then don't make a habit of getting shot." His eyes softened, the last shadows of battle fading. "We made it." She nodded, glancing over her shoulder at the corridor beyond. "They're safe. My people, our people, are safe." Jonas caught her hand, holding it tight. "We did it together." She looked down at their joined hands, their fingers entwined, a perfect fit, strong and certain. The glow from the instrument panel bathed them in cool blue, shadows dancing across their faces. Kayla squeezed his hand, her voice low and full. "Thank you, Jonas, for hope, for freedom." He brushed his thumb over her knuckles, eyes shining with the promise of something new. "For us." They sat together, shoulder to shoulder, gazing out at the endless stars as the freighter carried them away from captivity and into the unknown. Hope and uncertainty stretched before them, a future unwritten, but theirs to claim. In that cool blue glow, the bond forged in pain and trust was silent but indestructible. Their future was unknown, but it was theirs, claimed together, beneath a new dawn of freedom. Our story ends here. If you'd like to support us, you can use the Super Thanks button right under the video to leave a tip. It truly helps our team improve the quality of our work. We're grateful to each and every subscriber for being with us. Make sure you subscribe, press the like button, and tell us in the comments what stood out to you the most in this video. Your feedback means a lot to our team. You'll discover many more captivating stories on our channel. See you in the next one.